Rain battered the windshield as Daniel Whitmore shoved the door open before anyone could stop him. Shouts rose behind him. His name, urgent, confused. But he was already gone, shoes splashing onto the slick pavement, cold air tearing into his lungs. Inside the glass-lit house, laughter stalled. Party guests turned in disbelief, champagne glasses suspended halfway to their lips, watching as the man they had been orbiting moments earlier stepped into the downpour without a coat, without hesitation, without looking back, walking straight out of his own life and into the storm. The music behind him kept playing. Daniel didn't look back. His shoes soaked through within seconds, but he kept moving, crossing the wide driveway of the glass mansion that overlooked the Atlantic. The house glowed behind him like a palace, all light and warmth and laughter that didn't belong to him. He could hear his name being called again. Soft, this time, coaxing. But it only made the tightness in his chest worse. 32 years old, billions in assets, every door open. And yet, his hands were shaking like he was running from something instead of owning everything. He stopped at the edge of the road, rain matting his hair, and laughed once, short, bitter. The sound startled even him. Inside that house were people who claimed to love him, investors, friends, women who leaned close and smiled like they were sharing secrets. He knew the truth. He had learned it the hard way, years ago, when Vanessa Clark had looked him in the eye after a fight and said, "Don't act like I'd be here if you were broke." She hadn't even sounded cruel, just honest. Since then, every smile felt borrowed. Every compliment sounded rehearsed. Every relationship came with invisible price tags. Daniel pulled his phone from his pocket, stared at the screen filled with unread messages, and turned it off. Enough. By the time he reached the security gate, a black sedan slowed beside him. The window rolled down, and Marcus Reed leaned over from the driver's seat, worry etched deep into his face. "Get in," Marcus said. "You're soaked." Daniel stared ahead, rain dripping from his jaw. "Take me somewhere people don't know my name." Marcus hesitated. "Daniel? Please." That single word carried a weight Marcus had never heard from him before. He nodded and unlocked the door. The city blurred past as the rain eased. Neon lights reflected off wet roads, and Daniel watched strangers hurry under umbrellas, their lives moving forward without him. For the first time in years, no one stared, no one waved, no one recognized him. The silence was unsettling and comforting. Marcus parked under a dim streetlight far from the coastal estates, in a neighborhood where the buildings leaned slightly and the sidewalks told stories of wear. He turned off the engine but didn't move. "You can't do this," Marcus said quietly. "You think disappearing will fix what's broken, but the streets aren't a game. People get hurt out here." Daniel finally looked at him. "I'm already hurt." Marcus swallowed. He had been Daniel's driver for 10 years. He had seen the rise, the deals, the headlines. He had never seen this emptiness. "You're talking about throwing everything away." "I'm talking about finding out what's real." The words hung between them. Daniel leaned back, closed his eyes, and exhaled. "If I strip away the money, the power, the name, whatever's left, that's me. And I need to know if that's enough for anyone." Marcus stared at the steering wheel for a long time. Then he nodded once, slow and heavy. "If you do this, you do it properly. No shortcuts." Daniel opened his eyes. "Help me." The next morning, the mansion woke up without him. By noon, Daniel stood in a cramped storage room behind a community shelter, staring at his reflection in a cracked mirror. The man looking back at him was unfamiliar. His hair was uneven, his beard patchy. Ash and dirt dulled his skin. The expensive posture was gone, replaced by a slight hunch Marcus had coached him into practicing. Marcus handed him a thin brown jacket with a tear along the sleeve. "Once you step out, you don't come back until you're done." Daniel took the jacket. It smelled faintly of sweat and soap. He slipped it on, then the worn trousers, then the rubber slippers with one strap barely holding. He removed his watch last. It felt heavier than it should have. He placed it carefully on the table, beside his wallet and phone. When he looked up again, Marcus's eyes were glassy. "I barely recognize you," Marcus said. Daniel gave a small smile. "Good." The street swallowed him faster than he expected. Within minutes, he learned what invisibility felt like. People walked around him like he was an obstacle, not a person. Some glanced once and looked away quickly. Others stared too long, their expressions tight with judgment. Hunger came quietly, then loudly. By late afternoon, his legs ached, his stomach twisted. A coin clinked into the tin Marcus had given him, then another. Daniel murmured thanks, unsure if anyone heard. A group of teenagers laughed as they passed. One mimicked his posture, bent low, and his friends roared. Daniel lowered his eyes. He had signed billion-dollar deals without flinching. Now humiliation burned his throat. He was considering leaving when a small hand appeared in front of him, holding half a meat pie. Daniel looked up. A boy, no older than 10, stood there barefoot, crumbs on his shirt. He shrugged, shy. "You look hungry," the boy said. Daniel stared at the food, then at the boy's face. "Why?" The boy frowned, confused. "Because you are." That was all. Daniel took the pie with trembling fingers. "Thank you." The boy grinned and ran off before Daniel could say anything else. Daniel sat there long after, rain drying on his clothes, something warm breaking open in his chest. That night, as darkness settled and the city hummed around him, Daniel realized something terrifying and beautiful. For the first time in his life, someone had given him something without wanting anything back. If this story touched you already, don't forget to like the video and subscribe, because this journey is only just beginning. And before you go, leave a comment. Would you have done what Daniel did? Daniel woke to the sound of shouting and metal clanging. His eyes flew open, heart pounding, before he remembered where he was. The cold concrete beneath him sent a shock through his spine. He had slept behind a closed shop, curled on cardboard that smelled faintly of oil and dust. His neck ached. His clothes were stiff with dried rain. Morning in the city did not arrive gently. It crashed in with honking horns, raised voices, and the constant shuffle of feet that had places to be. Daniel sat up slowly, rubbing his face. Hunger greeted him immediately, sharp and demanding. A woman dragging a bucket glanced at him, then looked away, as if he hadn't existed. A man stepped over his feet without apology. Daniel stood, dusted himself off, and picked up the tin can Marcus had insisted he carry. This was the part he hadn't prepared for, the long hours of being ignored. He took a spot near a busy intersection, where taxis stopped to load passengers. The smell of fuel mixed with fried food from nearby stalls. Daniel lowered himself to the ground and rested the tin in front of him. His throat tightened as he opened his mouth. "Please," he said softly. The word felt foreign. Some people tossed coins without looking. Others shook their heads. A few muttered insults under their breath. One man told him to get a job. Another accused him of being lazy. By noon, the sun was merciless. Daniel's lips were dry, his head light. He tried to remember the last time he had been this uncomfortable. Boardroom arguments? Long flights? None of it came close. A pair of men stopped in front of him, eyes scanning his clothes. "You new here?" one asked. Daniel nodded cautiously. They laughed. This spot belongs to someone. Before Daniel could respond, a sharp voice cut through the air. Move along. A uniformed officer approached, posture calm but firm. He looked young, but his eyes carried weight. The men scoffed and backed away. The officer turned to Daniel. You okay? Daniel hesitated, then nodded again. Don't stay in one place too long, the officer said, and don't trust anyone who says they'll help you for free. Daniel studied his face. Why are you helping me? The officer shrugged. Someone has to. Then he walked away, boots striking the pavement with quiet authority. Daniel watched him disappear into the crowd, heart racing. Power, he realized, didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just stepped in when things went wrong. The afternoon dragged. Hunger gnawed at him again, fiercer than before. He counted the coins in his tin. Not enough for a full meal. He wandered, following the smell of food, until he saw a small stall under a faded canopy. A woman stood behind it, stirring a pot, steam curling around her face. She looked tired but focused, movements practiced and efficient. Daniel hovered at the edge, unsure. She noticed him almost immediately. You can't stand there, she said, not unkindly. Customers need space. Daniel nodded and stepped back. Minutes passed. Customers came and went. The woman served them all with the same calm tone. When there was a lull, she glanced at Daniel again. You eaten today? She asked. He shook his head. She sighed, ladled stew into a small container, and handed it to him with a piece of bread. Sit over there, out of the way. Daniel took it, stunned. I don't have... I know, she said. Eat. He sat where she pointed and ate slowly, savoring every bite. The warmth spread through him, easing the ache in his stomach. Thank you, he said when he finished. She wiped her hands on her apron. What's your name? Daniel hesitated. The lie came easier than he expected. Dan. She nodded. I'm Hannah. She didn't ask anything else. Over the next few days, Daniel returned. Not because he wanted food, though he did, but because Hannah spoke to him like he mattered. She didn't hover, didn't pity him. She told him when he was blocking customers, and laughed when he apologized too much. Once, a man snapped at Daniel for sitting too close. Hannah shut him down immediately. If you don't like it, eat somewhere else. The man grumbled, but paid anyway. Daniel watched her in awe. She had nothing to gain from defending him. One evening, as the sky turned orange, Hannah sat across from him on an overturned crate. You're not from around here. Daniel smiled faintly. Is it that obvious? You listen more than you talk, she said. People from here don't do that. He considered telling her everything. The mansion, the money, the experiment. The truth pressed against his chest, heavy and urgent. But fear held him back. If she knew, would she look at him differently? Would this kindness vanish the way all the others had? So, he stayed quiet. That night, Daniel lay awake, staring at the stars peeking through gaps between buildings. He thought about the boy who had shared his food, the officer who had stepped in, Hannah, who treated him like a person. This world was harsher, meaner. But somehow, it felt more honest. The next day, trouble found him again. A group of young men surrounded him near the taxi rank, mocking his clothes, filming him with their phones. Daniel lowered his head, pulse racing. He told himself to stay calm. Then a familiar voice cut through the noise. You again? The officer stepped forward, jaw tight. The men scattered immediately. You're pushing your luck, the officer said to Daniel. Name's Caleb. Dan, Daniel replied. Caleb studied him for a moment. You got family? Daniel shook his head. Caleb sighed. Be careful. This place eats people. As he walked away, Daniel realized something else had changed. He was no longer testing the world. The world was testing him. The first time Daniel realized he was afraid, it wasn't because of hunger or insults. It was the quiet moments, the ones where he had nothing to distract him from his thoughts. No meetings, no phone buzzing, no assistants reminding him what came next. Just time. Endless, unstructured time. He spent most mornings drifting through Eastbridge, learning the rhythm of the streets, where people gathered, where they avoided, where the police cars slowed down, and where they never bothered to look. He learned quickly that survival wasn't about strength. It was about awareness, knowing when to speak, knowing when to disappear. He also learned how quickly dignity could be stripped away. One afternoon, a woman stopped in front of him, her perfume sharp and expensive. She stared at him with open disgust. You people are everywhere now, she muttered, loud enough for others to hear. No shame. Daniel felt heat rush to his face. He wanted to tell her he owned buildings taller than her ego. He wanted to say he paid more in taxes than she would earn in a lifetime. Instead, he said nothing. The silence hurt more than any insult. That evening, he wandered toward Hannah's stall earlier than usual. She noticed immediately. You look rough today, she said, handing him a cup of water before he asked. Is it that bad? He tried to joke. She studied him carefully. People can be cruel. Don't let them teach you to hate yourself. The words hit harder than she could have known. Daniel sat nearby while she worked, listening to her talk to customers, laughing at small things. She complained about rising food prices, about her stove acting up again. Ordinary worries, honest worries. At one point, she glanced at him. You ever think about leaving this place? All the time, he said before he could stop himself. She smiled sadly. Me too. Later that night, as Daniel lay behind the shop he'd claimed as a sleeping spot, he replayed her words, leaving. He could leave whenever he wanted. That was the difference, and the guilt of it settled heavy in his chest. The next few days passed quietly, too quietly. Daniel was sitting near the market when he noticed a man watching him from across the street. Not openly, just enough to be unsettling. When Daniel stood, the man moved too. When Daniel crossed the road, the man followed. Fear prickled at his skin. He ducked into a narrow alley, heart pounding. The footsteps behind him sped up. Hey! A voice called. Wait. Daniel turned, fists clenched, ready to run. It was Caleb. You can't just vanish like that, Caleb said, catching his breath. This isn't a safe area. Daniel swallowed. I didn't know where else to go. Caleb sighed and leaned against the wall. Someone's been watching you. You need to stop sleeping out in the open. Why do you care? Daniel asked quietly. Caleb looked at him, something unreadable in his eyes. Because I've seen how this ends. He walked Daniel to a quieter street and showed him a spot better hidden from view. Don't thank me, Caleb said. Just stay alive. The warning lingered long after Caleb left. The following evening, Daniel arrived at Hannah's stall to find her arguing with a customer. The man was drunk, voice loud, gestures aggressive. I paid, he slurred. Give me more. You got what you paid for, Hannah said firmly. Move on. The man's eyes flicked to Daniel. What about him? He's eating for free? Hannah's jaw tightened. He's not your concern. Daniel stood, instinctively stepping closer. His heart raced, but he kept his voice low. Let it go. The man scoffed and stumbled away, muttering curses. Hannah exhaled slowly. You don't need to play hero, she said. I wasn't, Daniel replied. I just didn't like how he talked to you. She studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. Still, be careful. Something shifted between them after that. The conversations grew longer, the silences more comfortable. Daniel found himself laughing again, quietly, genuinely. He told her stories, carefully edited, about a life that wasn't his, but felt close enough to truth to matter. He never lied about how empty he had been. One night, as they closed the stall together, Hannah surprised him. "Why are you really here, Dan?" His chest tightened. He looked at her face in the dim light, the honesty in her eyes. He could tell her now. End the test. Risk everything. Instead, he shook his head. "I needed to disappear for a while." She nodded slowly. "We all do sometimes." Guilt twisted inside him. The next day, rumors started. Daniel noticed the looks first, whispers as he passed. A woman pulled her child closer when he approached. Someone called him a scammer. Another accused him of pretending to be poor for sympathy. He went to Hannah's stall, unsettled. She met his eyes and frowned. "People are talking." "About what?" "About you," she said gently. "They think you're lying about who you are." Daniel laughed weakly. If only they knew. Hannah didn't smile. "Be careful. When people decide who you are, it's hard to change their minds." That evening, two men waited near the stall after closing. They blocked Hannah's path, grinning. Daniel stepped forward without thinking. "Leave her alone." The men laughed. One shoved him aside easily. Daniel hit the ground hard, breath knocked from his lungs. Before things could get worse, sirens wailed. Caleb appeared, voice sharp, authority unquestionable. He grabbed one man, cuffed him. The other ran. Caleb turned to Hannah immediately. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, shaken but standing. Daniel stared. "You know each other," he said slowly. Caleb's eyes flicked to him. "She's my sister." The realization hit like a punch. That night, Daniel lay awake, staring at the darkness, heart pounding. This was no longer just his test. Daniel didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Hannah's face, when she realized Caleb was standing there in uniform, protective and furious. He replayed the moment again and again, the way she had instinctively moved toward her brother, the way Daniel had suddenly felt like an intruder in a world that wasn't his to disrupt. By morning, the guilt had settled deep in his chest, heavy and constant. When Daniel showed up near Hannah's stall later that day, Caleb was already there. He stood with his arms crossed, posture stiff, eyes sharp. Hannah was serving customers, pretending nothing was wrong, but Daniel could feel the tension in the air. Caleb didn't wait for her to finish. "You," he said, jerking his head toward the side of the road. "We need to talk." Daniel followed him a few steps away. The sounds of the street faded, just enough for the silence between them to feel loud. "You've been hanging around my sister," Caleb said. "Why?" Daniel chose his words carefully. "Because she's kind." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Kindness gets people hurt out here." "I never asked her for anything," Daniel said. "She chose to help." "That's the problem," Caleb snapped. "People like you come with baggage, desperation, trouble." Daniel swallowed. He wanted to tell him everything. He wanted to say he could protect Hannah, that money was not an issue, that danger would disappear if he lifted the disguise. But that would make everything worse. "I care about her," Daniel said quietly. Caleb studied him for a long moment. Caring doesn't feed anyone. It doesn't pay rent, and it doesn't stop men like those from coming back. He stepped closer. "Stay away from my sister." Daniel nodded. It felt like the only honest thing he could do. For 2 days, He did exactly that. He avoided Hannah's stall, even though every step away felt like tearing something loose inside him. He wandered farther than usual, spending hours near the harbor, watching fishermen haul nets, heavy with the day's catch. The smell of salt and fuel clung to the air. He thought about his parents' vacation homes, about yachts he had boarded without noticing the water. Now he noticed everything. Hunger returned, sharp and unforgiving. He ate whatever he could afford, dry bread, cheap fruit. At night, the cold settled into his bones. On the third day, he couldn't take it anymore. He approached Hannah's stall cautiously, stopping a few steps away, like he was crossing a line. She noticed him instantly. Her expression softened with relief, then tightened with concern. "I thought you left," she said. "I tried," Daniel replied. She handed a customer their food, then turned back to him. "Caleb scared you, didn't he?" Daniel shook his head. "He's just trying to protect you." "So am I," she said, "from people who think they know what's best for me." Her voice was steady, but Daniel saw the exhaustion beneath it. They didn't talk much that day, just small comments, shared glances. But the space between them felt charged, like something unspoken was waiting to break. That night, Daniel heard shouting near his sleeping spot. A fight erupted down the street, voices raised, glass shattering. He pressed himself against the wall, heart racing, realizing how quickly things could turn dangerous. For the first time since he started this experiment, he considered ending it. He imagined walking back into his life, showering, eating a proper meal, sleeping in a bed. He imagined telling Marcus it was over. Then he thought of Hannah, standing alone at her stall every day, facing the world without safety nets. He stayed. The following week brought new trouble. A sleek black car rolled slowly through Eastbridge one afternoon, out of place among the battered taxis and delivery vans. People noticed. Daniel noticed. From the car stepped a woman dressed in sharp lines and quiet confidence. Her heels clicked against the pavement, her gaze cool and assessing. Charlotte Hayes. Daniel's chest tightened. She hadn't seen him yet. Not like this. But she would. Charlotte approached Hannah's stall, scanning the area with thinly veiled distaste. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Hannah Cole?" Hannah nodded, wary. "Yes." "I'm looking for someone," Charlotte continued smoothly. "A man named Daniel Whitmore." Daniel froze. Hannah frowned. "I don't know anyone by that name." Charlotte's eyes flicked toward Daniel, lingering just a second too long. Recognition sparked. Daniel felt exposed, stripped bare in a way even the streets hadn't managed. Charlotte smiled politely at Hannah. "If you see him, tell him his family is looking for him." She turned and walked away, heels sharp and unbothered. Hannah watched her go, then turned to Daniel slowly. "You want to explain that?" Daniel's heart pounded. The lie he had carried cracked under the weight of her gaze. "I need time," he said. Hannah crossed her arms. "Time for what? To decide if I'm worth the truth?" The words stung because they were true. Before he could answer, Caleb appeared again, eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. "What's going on?" he asked. Hannah didn't look at him. "Apparently our friend here has a different name." Caleb turned to Daniel, suspicion blazing. "Who are you?" Daniel opened his mouth, closed it. "I'm sorry," he said instead. It wasn't enough. That night, Hannah didn't offer him food. She didn't chase him away either. She simply looked past him, like she used to look past the insults, and the distance hurt more than hunger ever had. Daniel sat alone under a flickering streetlight, the weight of his choices pressing down on him. The test had gone too far. What had started as a search for truth had become a lie that was hurting the one person who had treated him with genuine care. Far away, in a quiet office overlooking the city, Daniel's parents read a report placed in front of them. A private investigator had done his job well. "He's been living on the streets," his mother said, voice tight with disbelief and anger. "This woman, this Hannah, she's part of it." His father closed the folder slowly. "Then it's time we intervened." Daniel didn't know it yet, but the storm he thought he had walked into was nothing compared to what was coming. The next morning arrived heavy with unease. Daniel felt it before anything happened, a pressure in the air that made his chest tight. He washed his face at a public tap, the cold water stinging his skin, and stared at his reflection in the rippling surface. The disguise no longer felt like protection. It felt like a wall. When he reached Hannah's stall, she wasn't there. The canopy stood, the pots neatly arranged, but the fire was unlit. Daniel's stomach dropped. He waited, pacing, scanning the road. Minutes passed, then an hour. Finally, Caleb appeared, walking fast, jaw clenched. "She's not opening today," Caleb said flatly. "Why?" Daniel asked. Caleb studied him, eyes hard. "Because someone paid her a visit last night." Daniel's heart began to race. "Who?" "My mother would have called it a warning," Caleb said. "A woman in a nice car. Said she was looking out for Hannah's future." Daniel didn't need to ask who it was. "What did she say?" Daniel asked quietly. Caleb let out a short laugh. "She offered money, a lot of it. Told Hannah to walk away from you before things got complicated." Daniel felt sick. "And Hannah?" Caleb's gaze softened just a little. "She tore the check in half." Relief and shame crashed into Daniel at the same time. "But don't get it twisted," Caleb continued. "She's hurt, angry, and I don't blame her." Daniel nodded. "Neither do I." Caleb stepped closer. "If you care about her at all, you'll tell the truth, because whatever game you're playing, it's costing her." Daniel stood there long after Caleb walked away, the noise of the city buzzing around him. He thought about the first night he'd slept on cardboard, about the boy who shared his food, about Hannah's quiet kindness, and he realized something terrifying. He had already found what he was looking for. He just didn't know how to deserve it. That afternoon, rumors spread like wildfire. People whispered when Daniel passed. Some pointed openly, others laughed. A man shouted that Hannah was running a scam with a fake beggar. Someone posted a blurry video online, speculating wildly about secret benefactors and hidden wealth. Hannah stayed out of sight. Daniel tried to approach her apartment that evening but stopped himself at the door. He had no right to push. Not yet. Instead, he made a call from a borrowed phone. "Marcus," Daniel said when the line connected. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Where are you?" "I'm still here," Daniel replied. "But it's time." "Time for what?" "For the truth." Marcus was silent for a moment. "Once you do this, there's no going back." Daniel looked out at the street, at the people moving through their lives, with no idea who he was or what he owned. "I know." The next day, the city buzzed with anticipation. A small charity forum had been scheduled downtown, something Daniel had originally funded months earlier and promptly forgotten. Now, he stood at the edge of the hall, clean-shaven, dressed simply but unmistakably himself again. The room filled with murmurs when he stepped onto the stage. Daniel took a breath. "My name is Daniel Whitmore," he said, "and for the past several weeks, I've been living on the streets of Eastbridge." The room went still. He told them everything. Not dramatically, not defensively. He spoke about loneliness, about wanting to be seen without the shield of money, about the people who had shown him kindness when they had nothing to gain. He spoke about Hannah, I lied to her, he said plainly. And because of that lie, she was hurt. That's on me. Cameras flashed, whispers rippled. But let me be clear, Daniel continued, voice steady. Hannah Cole did not ask me for anything. She didn't know who I was. She didn't want my money. She treated me like a human being when she thought I had nothing. He paused, letting the words settle. That kind of integrity can't be bought, and anyone who says otherwise doesn't understand its value. The room erupted. Outside, Hannah watched the broadcast on a small screen, hands shaking. Tears blurred her vision as she listened, not because he was rich, not because he was famous, but because he was finally honest. Caleb stood beside her, silent. Daniel stepped down from the stage to a storm of questions, but he ignored them all. He pushed through the crowd, heart pounding, and found Hannah standing near the back. Their eyes met. I'm sorry, Daniel said. No speeches, no excuses, just truth. Hannah studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded once. No more lies. Never again, Daniel said. They didn't embrace, not yet, but something fragile and real settled between them. That night, the rumors died. Not all at once, but enough. Caleb found Daniel later, outside the hall. You could have done this earlier, he said. I should have, Daniel replied. Caleb extended a hand. Just don't make her pay for your mistakes again. Daniel shook it. I won't. For the first time since this journey began, Daniel slept in a bed. Not in a mansion, not in luxury. In a small guest room Marcus had arranged nearby. As he lay there, staring at the ceiling, he knew the experiment was over. But the real work, earning trust, rebuilding dignity, was only just beginning. If this moment moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for the rest of the story. And tell us in the comments, do you believe honesty can fix everything, or are some wounds too deep? Daniel woke before dawn, the unfamiliar quiet of the room pressing in on him. No guards outside the door, no assistant waiting with a schedule, just the soft hum of the city beyond the window. For a moment he lay still, letting the weight of the last 24 hours settle. The confession, the cameras, Hannah's face when she heard the truth. Relief had come first, then fear. Telling the truth hadn't fixed everything. It had only removed the lie. What remained was damage, fragile and real. He dressed simply and left the apartment before Marcus could stop him. The streets were cooler at this hour, the air carrying the smell of bread from nearby bakeries. Eastbridge was waking up slowly, shutters lifting, vendors arranging their stalls. Daniel walked without security, without announcement, feeling exposed in a new way. When he reached Hannah's street, he stopped. Her stall was open again. The sight hit him harder than he expected. The canopy fluttered slightly in the breeze, pots steaming, the familiar rhythm of her movements grounding him. She looked up and saw him. This time there was no shock, just caution. Daniel approached slowly, keeping his hands visible, as if she might need space to retreat. Good morning, he said. Hannah nodded. Morning. The distance between them felt wider than the street itself. I didn't know if you'd come back, she said. I wasn't sure I deserved to, Daniel replied. She studied him while serving a customer, then turned back. Sit. He obeyed, perching on the same crate he'd used weeks ago. The simplicity of the moment felt heavier than any grand gesture. I'm not angry because you were rich, Hannah said after a while. I'm angry because you let me look foolish, because you let people think I was something I'm not. Daniel's throat tightened. I know, and I'm sorry. She met his eyes. Sorry doesn't erase it. I'm not asking it to, he said. I just want to earn back what I broke. She considered him in silence. Around them, life continued. People laughed. Taxi horns blared. Someone argued over prices. The world didn't pause for reconciliation. "Caleb doesn't trust you," Hannah said finally. "I wouldn't either," Daniel replied. "He thinks you'll get tired of this place, of me." Daniel leaned forward. "I don't want to rescue you. I don't want to change you. I just want to be honest, with you and with myself." Hannah looked away, jaw tight. "We'll see." It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't rejection either. That afternoon, Daniel faced another confrontation. His parents arrived without warning. A black SUV pulled up near the market, drawing attention immediately. People whispered. Phones came out. Daniel felt the familiar tightening in his chest, but he didn't move away. His mother stepped out first, immaculate and furious. His father followed, expression guarded. "This is where you've been hiding?" his mother demanded. Daniel didn't flinch. "I wasn't hiding. I was learning." She scoffed. "From this?" Hannah stiffened behind her stall. Daniel stepped between them. "Don't." His mother stared at him, stunned. "Excuse me?" "You don't get to talk to her like that," Daniel said evenly. His father cleared his throat. "Daniel, we're worried. This situation is becoming a spectacle." "It became a spectacle when you sent someone to buy her silence," Daniel shot back. His mother's eyes flashed. "I was protecting you." "You were protecting an image," he replied. "Not me." Hannah watched the exchange quietly, pride straightening her spine. "This woman," Daniel continued, "is the reason I remembered who I am without all of this." His mother laughed sharply. "You think love survives on good intentions?" Hannah finally spoke. "No, but neither does it survive on money." The words hung in the air. Daniel's mother turned on her. "You have no idea what kind of life he comes from." Hannah met her gaze. "And you have no idea what kind of strength it takes to live without safety nets." For a moment, no one spoke. Daniel's father stepped forward. "Enough. This isn't helping." He looked at Hannah. "I apologize for the way this was handled." It wasn't warmth, but it was something. "We'll talk later," his father said to Daniel quietly. They left as abruptly as they'd arrived. That evening, Hannah closed her stall early. Daniel helped without being asked, stacking crates, wiping surfaces. When they finished, she turned to him. "I'm not ready to pretend everything is fine," she said. "I wouldn't want you to," Daniel replied. "But," she added, "I don't want to lose what we had either." Hope flickered, cautious and fragile. They walked together through the neighborhood, not touching, but close enough to feel the presence of the other. Caleb watched them from a distance, arms crossed, weighing every step Daniel took. Later that night, alone again, Daniel sat by the window and thought about power. Real power. Not influence or money, but the ability to face consequences without running. Tomorrow, he knew, would bring more challenges. The media hadn't finished. His parents hadn't finished. The city hadn't finished testing him. But for the first time, he wasn't running from the discomfort. He was standing in it. The days that followed were harder than Daniel expected. The truth had come out. But truth didn't erase consequences. It sharpened them. People in Eastbridge treated him differently now. Some stared with open curiosity, whispering his name, like it was a rumor they weren't sure they believed. Others looked at him with resentment, as if his brief time among them had been a performance, a mockery of lives they couldn't step out of when it got uncomfortable. A man shouted at him one afternoon, "So it was a joke to you, sleeping on the street for fun?" Daniel didn't argue. He took the anger as it came. He spent his days walking the neighborhood, speaking to people he had once begged beside. He listened more than he talked. When someone accused him, He nodded. When someone cursed him, he didn't flinch. For the first time, he wasn't trying to control the narrative. Hannah watched all of it from a careful distance. She noticed how he waited in line like everyone else, how he paid for food now, without flashing money, without trying to impress, how he corrected people when they called her lucky. She's not lucky, Daniel said once firmly. She's strong. That mattered to her more than he knew. But the pressure didn't let up. The media circled like vultures. Reporters camped near the market, shoving microphones at Hannah whenever they spotted her. She ignored them at first, then grew visibly tired. One evening, she snapped. "I didn't ask for this," she told Daniel, voice shaking. "I didn't ask to be dragged into your world." "I know," he said softly. "I just wanted to sell food, live quietly." Guilt twisted inside him again. "Tell me what you need." Hannah hesitated. "I need space, and I need you to stop trying to fix things with money or speeches." He nodded immediately. "Okay." It wasn't easy, but Daniel did exactly that. He stepped back. No interviews, no public appearances. He rejected offers to turn the story into a brand. Instead, he did something small. He showed up early at the market and cleaned the area before vendors arrived. He helped a man fix a broken cart. He paid school fees for Ethan, the boy who had once shared his food, but made sure it came through a local fund, anonymously. People noticed. Caleb noticed most of all. One afternoon, Caleb found Daniel carrying crates for an elderly woman, whose hands shook too much to lift them. He watched from across the street, expression unreadable. Later, he approached Daniel directly. "You still here?" Caleb asked. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow. "I said I wasn't running." Caleb studied him carefully. Most men would have left by now. Most men weren't changed by this place, Daniel replied. Caleb crossed his arms. "You hurt my sister." "I know. And you could hurt her again." Daniel met his gaze. "I won't pretend I won't make mistakes, but I won't lie to her. Ever." Caleb was silent for a long moment. "Love doesn't survive intentions alone," he said finally. "I know," Daniel replied. "It survives responsibility." Caleb exhaled slowly. "We'll see." That evening, Hannah surprised him. She invited him to walk with her after closing the stall, the streets glowing softly under streetlights. They walked side by side, steps in sync, the tension between them easing slightly. "I've been thinking," Hannah said. Daniel waited. "You didn't have to stay," she continued. "After the truth came out, you could have gone back to comfort." "I thought about it," Daniel admitted. "What stopped you?" Daniel stopped walking and looked at her. "Because leaving would have proven everyone right, that I only cared when it was convenient." She searched his face, looking for cracks. "And if it stops being convenient, then I stay anyway." They resumed walking. "I don't forgive easily," Hannah said quietly, "but I don't ignore effort either." Hope flared again, cautious but real. The next challenge came from a direction Daniel hadn't expected. An investor pulled out of one of his companies, citing instability and poor judgment. Others followed, quietly at first, then publicly. Headlines shifted tone. The billionaire who had disappeared was no longer a curiosity. He was a risk. Marcus called him late one night. "This is starting to hurt," he said. "Not just reputation, operations." Daniel stared at the city lights outside his window. "Then let it hurt." Marcus hesitated. "You sure?" "Yes." For the first time, Daniel allowed his choices to cost him something tangible. News of the losses reached Hannah through gossip, then confirmation. She confronted him the next day. "You're losing money because of me," she said bluntly. Daniel shook his head. "I'm losing money because I chose honesty over comfort." She frowned. And if it gets worse? Then I adjust, he said. I don't abandon people. She studied him, something shifting in her expression. Later that week, Caleb invited Daniel to dinner. It wasn't warm, it wasn't friendly, but it was an opening. The apartment was modest, clean, filled with the smell of home-cooked food. Caleb watched Daniel closely as he ate, as if testing whether this version of him was real. Halfway through the meal, Caleb spoke. I grew up fast, he said. We didn't have backups. One mistake could ruin everything. Daniel nodded. I grew up surrounded by backups. It almost ruined me. Caleb snorted softly despite himself. When Daniel left that night, Caleb clapped a hand on his shoulder. Don't waste this chance. I won't, Daniel said. The shift was slow, almost invisible, but it was happening. People stopped shouting. Some still judged, but others softened. Hannah laughed more freely again. The stall felt warmer. One evening, as they stood together watching the crowd thin, Hannah spoke quietly. I'm scared, she admitted. Of me? Daniel asked. Of believing you, she replied. He took a breath. I can't promise you a perfect future, but I can promise you a real one. She nodded slowly. That might be enough. The city hummed around them, unaware that something fragile and powerful was rebuilding itself piece by piece. Change didn't arrive with applause. It crept in quietly, carried by routine. Daniel kept showing up. He showed up when the market was chaotic and tempers were short. He showed up when the weather turned ugly and sales were slow. He showed up when no one was watching, especially then. Hannah noticed the consistency before she trusted it. One morning she found him sitting on the curb, fixing a loose plank on her stall with borrowed tools. He hadn't asked, he hadn't announced it. He just did it. You don't have to keep proving anything, she said. I'm not, Daniel replied. I'm participating. That word stayed with her. Participation meant risk. It meant he could be disappointed. It meant he wasn't observing from above anymore. The neighborhood slowly adjusted to his presence. Some people still whispered, but others greeted him by name now. Not Daniel Whitmore, just Daniel. The one who helped carry water when pipes burst. The one who waited his turn. The one who listened. One afternoon, Ethan, the boy who had shared his food weeks ago, ran up to him waving a crumpled paper. I got in, the boy shouted. Daniel crouched down. Got in where? The school, Ethan said, grinning so hard it hurt to look at. They said someone paid the fees. Daniel smiled. That's amazing. Ethan squinted at him. Was it you? Daniel shook his head. It was the community. The boy ran off, laughter echoing down the street. That night, Daniel sat alone, thinking about how different this felt from signing checks in boardrooms. This wasn't charity. It was responsibility, and it couldn't be undone with a press release. Meanwhile, Hannah wrestled with her own fears. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that this wasn't another chapter that would end with her standing alone, cleaning up emotional wreckage. She had seen too many people promise change when it suited them. But Daniel wasn't leaving. That scared her more than if he had. One evening, as they walked together after closing, Hannah stopped suddenly. What happens when your world needs you back? She asked. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He looked around, at the cracked sidewalks, the uneven streetlights, the familiar faces. My world is bigger now, he said. It includes this. That's not what I asked. He turned to her. Then I make space. I don't erase this part to fit into the old one. She searched his face for certainty, found something steadier instead. At the same time, Daniel's parents were losing patience. His mother called daily, each conversation sharper than the last. His father was quieter, but no less concerned. Investors demanded reassurance. Boards wanted statements. The narrative was slipping out of their control. Daniel refused to rush it. "Let them wait," he told Marcus. "I waited my whole life to feel human." That choice came with consequences. A major partnership was put on hold. Another investor threatened legal action, citing reputational damage. Headlines shifted again, this time colder. Hannah heard about it from a supplier who thought he was doing her a favor. "You know he's losing everything for you," the woman said. Hannah didn't respond, but the words followed her home. That night she confronted Daniel. "I won't be the reason you destroy your life," she said, voice firm. Daniel looked at her steadily. "You're not." "You're choosing this," she insisted. "Yes," he agreed, "and I'm choosing it with my eyes open." She shook her head. "You don't understand what it's like to be blamed when things fall apart." "I do now," Daniel said quietly. She laughed bitterly. "No, you don't. Because when this hurts you enough, you still have somewhere soft to land." The truth of it cut deep. Daniel took a step back. "Then let me earn my place here, without asking you to carry that weight." "How?" she demanded. "By staying," he said, "even if you don't choose me." The words settled heavily between them. Days passed. Hannah pulled away again. Not cold, just guarded. Daniel respected it. He didn't push. He didn't plead. He waited. Caleb noticed. "You're learning," Caleb said one afternoon as they stood watching the street. "Most men mistake patience for weakness." "I've mistaken power for love before," Daniel replied. "I don't want to do that again." Caleb nodded slowly. Then something unexpected happened. A fire broke out 2 streets over late one night. Not large, but fast. People poured into the road, shouting, scrambling. Daniel was already moving before he thought about it. He helped drag water containers. He lifted a woman who had tripped. He didn't call anyone. He didn't wait for instructions. He acted. Hannah arrived minutes later, breathless, eyes wide. She saw him there, soot-streaked, coughing, steadying a man who could barely stand. In that moment, something inside her shifted. This wasn't performance. This was instinct. After the fire was contained, people stood around, shaken, but safe. Someone clapped Daniel on the shoulder. Another thanked him quietly. Hannah approached him, heart pounding. "You didn't have to do that," she said. Daniel wiped his face. "I wanted to." She stared at him, emotions warring behind her eyes. Then, without ceremony, she reached for his hand. The contact was brief, simple, but it was everything. Later that night, as the neighborhood settled back into uneasy calm, Hannah spoke. "I don't know how this ends," she said. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "Neither do I." "But," she added, "I don't feel alone in it anymore." Hope, real and dangerous, settled between them. Somewhere across the city, Daniel's parents watched footage of the fire response on the news. No mention of billions, no mention of markets, just a man helping his neighbors. His father leaned back, thoughtful. "Maybe," he said slowly, "we misjudged what matters." His mother said nothing. The path ahead was still uncertain. Trust wasn't fully restored. The world hadn't softened overnight. But something unbreakable had begun to form. Not from promises, but from presence. The morning after the fire, Eastbridge felt different. Not calmer, just more awake. People talked in low voices as they swept ash from doorways and checked on one another. Daniel moved through the streets quietly, helping where he could, refusing praise when it came. Hannah watched him from her stall, her thoughts tangled. She had seen men perform kindness before. She had seen them rise to the moment, then disappear when applause faded. But this felt different. Daniel wasn't telling the story. He wasn't reshaping it. He wasn't even staying close to her, as if trying to claim credit by proximity. He was just there. Still, fear lingered. That afternoon, Hannah made a decision. She closed her stall early and found Daniel sitting on a low wall, talking with Ethan and a few other kids. The boy laughed at something Daniel said, then ran off with the others. "We need to talk," Hannah said. Daniel stood immediately. "Okay." She led him down a quieter street, stopping near a mural chipped by time and weather. She took a deep breath. "I can't build a future on hope alone," she said. "I need clarity." Daniel nodded. "Ask me anything." She studied him carefully. "Are you staying here because you love me, or because you're trying to fix yourself?" The question hit harder than any accusation. Daniel didn't rush his answer. "I came here to fix myself," he said honestly. "But I stayed because I care about you, and about this place. One doesn't cancel out the other." Hannah crossed her arms. "And when this place stops needing you?" "I'll still need it," Daniel replied. She searched his face, looking for arrogance, for certainty that felt fake. Found none. "Then this is what I need," she said slowly. "No secrets, no disappearing, no grand gestures meant to silence doubt." Daniel nodded. "Agreed. And if your world pulls you away?" "Then I come back," he said. "Not because I'm obligated, because I choose to." Hannah exhaled, the tension easing slightly. "Okay." It wasn't a declaration, but it was an opening wide enough to step through carefully. The real test came days later. Daniel's father requested a private meeting. They met in a modest cafe far from boardrooms and headlines. Daniel arrived early. When his father entered, he looked older than Daniel remembered. Tired. "I didn't raise you for this," his father said without preamble. Daniel met his gaze. "You raised me to think, to question, to lead with purpose." His father sighed. "You're destabilizing everything we built." "I'm redefining it," Daniel replied. Silence stretched between them. "You're losing influence," his father said quietly. "People are nervous."
"Then they should ask why," Daniel replied. "If leadership can't survive honesty, it wasn't strong to begin with." His father leaned back, studying him. "You sound different." "I am." Another pause. "Your mother doesn't understand this," his father admitted. "She sees loss where you see growth." Daniel softened slightly. "So did I. For a long time." When they parted, nothing was fully resolved, but something shifted. Respect, fragile and cautious, replaced frustration. Meanwhile, Hannah faced her own test. A former classmate recognized her at the market and pulled her aside. "You could leave all this," the woman said. "Start over, with him." Hannah shook her head. "I don't want to be someone who leaves when life gets complicated." The woman laughed. "You're brave." "No," Hannah replied. "I'm choosing." That night, Hannah invited Daniel to her apartment for the first time. It wasn't a grand moment, just a small space, clean and warm, filled with signs of effort and care. Daniel stepped inside carefully, aware of the trust it represented. They sat at a small table, eating quietly. "This is my life," Hannah said. "Not the part people see. The real part." Daniel nodded. "Thank you for letting me in." She met his eyes. "Don't take that lightly." "I won't." They talked late into the night, not about money or futures or fear, but about small things. Music, childhood memories, moments that shaped them. For the first time, the weight between them felt balanced. Days turned into weeks. The media attention faded, replaced by new scandals, new stories. Investors adjusted. Some returned, others didn't. Daniel accepted the losses without bitterness. He moved into a small apartment near Eastbridge. Not permanently, not symbolically, just practically. He needed to be present. Caleb noticed. "You're serious," Caleb said one evening. "Yes," Daniel replied. Caleb nodded slowly. "Then I won't stand in the way." It was the closest thing to approval Daniel expected. One night, as they walked together after closing the stall, Hannah stopped and turned to him. "I don't need you to save me," she said. "I know," Daniel replied. "But I want you to walk with me," she continued, "even when it's boring, even when it's hard." Daniel smiled. "Those are the parts I'm staying for." She reached for his hand again, this time holding it longer. Somewhere inside Daniel, something settled. He had stopped proving. He had started belonging. The first quiet morning they shared felt strange in the best way. Daniel woke before Hannah, listening to the city breathe outside the open window. There were no sirens, no shouting, just the low hum of life beginning again. He lay still, afraid that moving too quickly might break something fragile. Hannah stirred and sat up, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She looked at him, really looked at him, and smiled faintly. "You're still here," she said. Daniel smiled back. I am." For a long time, that was enough. Life didn't suddenly become easier. Bills still came. The market still had slow days. Some people still judged. But the difference was subtle and powerful. Daniel no longer felt like a visitor waiting to leave. He became part of the rhythm. He learned which vendors needed help setting up, which children lingered because they needed attention more than food. He stopped offering solutions and started asking questions. When people spoke, he listened without trying to fix everything. Hannah noticed the shift. "You don't rush anymore," she said one evening as they closed the stall together. "I used to think speed meant control," Daniel replied. "Now I think it meant fear." She nodded. "Fear of what?" "Of being still long enough to feel empty." They walked home in silence, hands brushing occasionally, comfortable and unforced. Weeks passed. Daniel's parents came again, this time without an entourage. They didn't stay long. There were no dramatic apologies, just an awkward meal, careful conversation, and something like understanding beginning to form. His mother watched Hannah closely, searching for flaws she couldn't find. His father asked Hannah about her plans, her education, her dreams. Hannah answered plainly, without impressing or shrinking. When they left, his mother paused at the door. "You didn't take the money," she said quietly. Hannah met her gaze. "I don't want a life that has to be bought." Something in the older woman's expression cracked. That night, Daniel's father said softly, "You chose well." It wasn't approval, but it was acceptance. The real moment came later, without witnesses. Daniel and Hannah sat on the roof of her building, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. The air was warm, the silence easy. Daniel shifted, nerves creeping in. "There's something I want to ask you," he said. Hannah raised an eyebrow. "That sounds dangerous." He smiled, then grew serious. "I won't ask you to marry me today. I won't promise you a future I can't guarantee." She waited. "But I want to ask if you'll build one with me." Slowly, honestly, without lies. Hannah looked at him for a long moment, the city reflected in her eyes. "No disappearing," she said. "Never." "No tests," she added. "Only truth." She nodded. Then yes. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it was real. They didn't announce anything. They didn't post pictures. They just kept living. Hannah enrolled in evening classes again, balancing work and study with exhaustion and determination. Daniel supported her without hovering, without turning help into control. When she succeeded, he celebrated. When she struggled, he stayed quiet and present. Daniel returned to his work too, reshaping his leadership. He pushed for policies that reflected what he had learned. Dignity over image, accountability over optics. Some people resisted. Others followed. Change was slow, but it lasted. One afternoon, months later, Daniel found himself back at the intersection where he had once begged. The memory felt distant, like another lifetime. Ethan ran up to him, taller now, school uniform crisp. "Guess what?" the boy said proudly. Daniel grinned. "Let me guess. Top of your class." Ethan beamed. Second. Second is still winning," Daniel said. As the boy ran off, Daniel felt Hannah's hand slip into his. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes," he said, surprised by how true it felt. They walked on, blending into the crowd, no longer watched, no longer whispered about. Just two people choosing each other. The city moved around them, indifferent and alive, full of stories just as complex and unfinished as theirs. And somewhere along the way, Daniel realized the answer to the question that had driven him into the streets. Love hadn't appeared when he lost everything. It appeared when he stopped, pretending he could leave. If you stayed with this story until the end, thank you. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes real love is built, not bought. And in the comments, tell us, what part of this journey stayed with you the most? Because sometimes the richest thing a person can find is belonging.